Hey Internet, it's Chris Bostock here at the Invest.Move personal training studio, and today we're going to be doing a video on bracing. We're going to be going over what bracing is and why we need to do it. We're going to be going on how we're going to brace, and then we're also going to be going over some exercises that will help on the how to brace. So what bracing is quite simply tensing our core so we're stabilized against movement. If we don't have our core tense when we're doing some exercises, then it's likely that our body is going to start to wiggle and find different positions to hold itself in through movement, which is going to then put kind of pressure and weight on areas of the body that we might not want it. Obviously, let's say if you had a squat and we weren't very braced, then it's likely that we're either going to fold forwards or we're going to arch backwards, both of which are going to make your back feel horrendous. So it's important that we keep our core braced through movements while we're doing them. So that's what bracing is. It's simply just tensing your core so that we're going to be holding ourselves in a nice stable position while doing exercise. There's three main types of bracing, and that's to do with where the air is while we're doing our bracing. There's one where we're letting all the air out of our lungs and then bracing. There's one where we're bringing all of the air in and holding it in our chest. And then there's one where we're bringing the air in and trying to fill up our diaphragm and stomach. Now, we won't be doing anything in the gym generally that uses that first example. That's mainly used in things like martial arts. And the reason is, I'm sure if you've ever been winded or had the air knocked out of you before, like if you landed on your back or something when there's been air, you just expel it and you can't catch your breath, your lungs kind of tighten up and everything. That's mainly used in martial arts. So when we're doing martial arts or you're getting punched, we don't want to hold air in our stomach because we're going to get winded. So if you've ever watched anyone doing boxing or they're doing training, they will generally breathe out and tense. So if someone was to come and punch you, you would go and you would tense, but you'd let the air out. So when they hit you, you're nice and solid, but there's nothing to expel. Now, when we're under a squat bar, unless you're doing some crazy Instagram exercise, you're probably not going to expect to be punched at the same time. So we want to have a load of air in us. If you imagine that you have like a tyre and you deflate the tyre, it's going to be really noodly and easy to move around. If we inflate that tyre, then it's going to be a lot more solid and it's able to hold weight. When we're underweight, we want to be expanded and tense. So we've created a nice kind of barrel of safety around us that isn't going to fold under pressure. So they're the three main types. One's going to be with the air out. The other ones are going to be with air in. It's just where you're holding it. Now, when we're doing things like squats and we're doing deadlifts or quite a lot of the gym exercises where we'll be under heavy loads, we want to be doing the kind of breathing that's going to be poured into our stomach. So we're expanding all of our core rather than lifting up into our chest. You'll see a lot of people breathe like this. Now, when you do that, you're getting a lung full of air. Your lungs don't change position. They're still going to be where they are. But we're bringing all of the tension, opening up our rib cage, and we're leaving all of this area open and easy to move around. So again, even though we might be tense, we're still in that same position where you could easily get folded around underweight. So we want to learn how to breathe into our stomach. Again, the lungs aren't changing position, it's just where we're holding the tension. So instead of breathing like this, we're going to be breathing like this. We're trying to expand everything within our stomach and our midsection and then being able to brace into that. But how are we going to actually do this? There's two drills that are really going to help us understand how to do this type of bracing. The first one we can do standing up, the next one we can do lying down. Both of them are really useful. It just depends on what works better for you. So, without ado, we're going to go into bracing standing up. Now, when we brace, we're going to try and hold tension in the core and breathe into that tension. So one of the main things a lot of people get wrong is that they relax, they take a deep breath in and then they try and tense while they're all the way out there. What we want to do is try and let some air out of our lungs Relax the stomach a little bit. Brace, not super hard, but just a little bit of tension, and then breathe into that tension, filling everything up, making everything pressurized, and then clamping down and being really tensed at the far end. So to do that, we're going to do this. Hands, if we go outside the belly button, just where kind of the ab line is, so we're going to come out to the outside of that, and we're going to have our fingers over here. From here, we're going to breathe out and let the stomach collapse in. So as you breathe out, just let everything go nice and loose and let your stomach come in. From here then, I want us to just apply a little bit of tension where we just tense the abs a little bit. Just to turn everything on. It's not a huge amount of tension, just a little bit. From there then, I want you to try and breathe and push out against your fingers. So we're not pushing straight out, we're expanding the whole way around. A lot of people, when they breathe into their stomach or first learn it, will kind of breathe where they're doing this. And they just shove the stomach out forwards. We want to try and get it so we're not just tensing this way, otherwise we've just got kind of an oblong going that way. We want to try and get a full massive circle going round. So from here, if we breathe out, a little bit of tension, breathe in, and you can see everything starts to expand out against it. Now, if I was to tense down in this position, I'm quite expanded around, but I'm really tense. Nothing's going to move around when I go for it. So again, hands go in, let everything nice and loose, breathe out, tense a little bit, breathe in, and then lock in and tense. That's the position we're going to be in when we go for kind of a squat or we go for a deadlift. Not so important on a bench press because our body's going to be in a bit of a different position, but we'll be holding a similar amount of tension. Practice this a lot. Try to get the idea of expanding out into the hands and then locking down. We'll be going over how we do this within the deadlift, the squat and the bench press in different videos. This is mainly just around the mechanics of the breathing. So practice that a bunch. A really useful tool is having a belt. So having a belt can be really useful. You can either get these kind of more powerlifting style ones, which are the leather, a lot stronger, a lot firmer, or we can have ones which are a bit more on the kind of CrossFit side of stuff or weightlifting side of things, Olympic weightlifting, which are a bit more flexible. They just allow for a little bit more movement. I enjoy both of them for different movements, but this one, with it being a Velcro, is a really good way for you to know you're getting the feedback of learning it properly. So what we can start to do is we can cinch this in. And now it's got quite a lot of tightness on there. I can still kind of get my thumbs in, but I know if I was to breathe into this, I'd get a lot of bracing. So from here, if I was to do that same exercise again and breathe out, loads of room. Now if I tense and breathe into it, I can get a lot of tension. I can brace myself against this belt now, and that's going to allow me to stay even more stable. So not only would having a belt do things like increase the stability, allow you to put the pressure in, it's a good feedback tool on there. We don't necessarily need a belt. It's just a nice bit of kit to kind of help us with one, learning the bracing, two, reinforcing whether you're doing the bracing right, and then overall it does help us keep a bit more stable as we go through. So that's a really good tool to help us go through stuff. But another way of practicing the bracing, if we find that we're not really getting to grips with the stood up version, is to do one where we're lying down on the ground. So the one where we're lying down on the ground is going to be really useful for the people that find it quite difficult to feel the kind of pushing out of their stomach, or for the people that are just pushing out forwards, like I mentioned before, and not feeling the whole kind of 360 bracing that we want. We're going to lie down flat on our face or on our chest. Obviously, you don't have to have your face completely in the floor, but we're going to be face down. And then from there, we're going to do the same kind of exercise. Our hands aren't going to be on our stomach in the front, because obviously we'll be lying down on it. We're going to bring them out to the side so they're kind of touching round on the obliques. But from here, because there's pressure down on the floor, When we breathe, we can push our stomach down into the floor and feel that we're expanding. Now, like we said, we don't want to just expand forwards, we want to expand everywhere. So if you're really struggling with the bracing full stop, this might be a nice cue to be able to get you to get that expanding forwards. But then what we want to start doing is to not only expand forwards, but to expand out sideways. So the whole of us is getting this 360-degree brace as we go. When we do that, everything's going to be way more stable, not only back and forwards, but sideways, because we've filled up and expanded out into our kind of obliques as well as kind of our rec fair, our core going forwards. So, from here, as we lie down, hands can come up. We're going to breathe out and tense. And then we're going to breathe into it. And we're going to try and breathe so our stomach pushes into the floor to start off with. So we breathe out, tense, breathe in. And then everything is going to lift us up. So from there, if I breathe in and tense, you can see how I kind of got lifted off the floor ever so slightly. I'm not sure if it'll pick up on cam, but I was being lifted up a little bit because my stomach was being pushed into the floor. Now, I know that I'm expanded on my obliques as well, but if you feel like you're not doing that as such, we're going to bring one hand and put it towards our side. From here now, when we breathe in and tense, we're going to try and get this arm to be pushed out at the same time as this coming out. So if you feel like this comes out and this doesn't move, then we need to expand into our side more. If we feel like this is happening, this isn't happening, then we just need to get that equal pressure as it goes through. So again, one hand on the side, we do the breathe out and tense, we breathe into it, and then this will expand, and then we clamp down and tense into that pressure. So that's the basic overview of bracing. The main kind of bracing we're going to be using for things like squat and deadlift. Obviously, like I said, the bench is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to put out some videos on how we're going to use it within the squat, and obviously a breakdown of a comprehensive guide of doing the squat. I'm also going to do that with the deadlift and the bench press. So if we watch those videos, you'll see exactly how we're going to implement the bracing within those exercises. But as a generalisation, it's a pretty good kind of just catch-all that we want to be doing when we're lifting of some kind. Obviously, certain exercises like a bicep curl might not need you to get that massive breathe and brace the whole time. We just need a little bit of tension in the core to make sure we're not rocking forwards and backwards with the weight. But if we're squatting, deadlifting, benching, overhead press, bent over rows, any of the major compound movements, then that kind of bracing is going to be paramount to us having a good solid lift with good stability and good technique. Cool, so quick recap. Breathe out, tense, breathe into the stomach, tense. Expand not only forwards but sideways, and try to make sure that we're really getting a good solid bit of air coming into us. The more air you can get in, the more pressure we get to fill up, the tenser and harder we're going to be to move and more stable we're going to be. That's going to be a quick guide to bracing going through. I say a quick guide, it's around about 10-12 minutes in it. But hopefully that will help some of you with understanding bracing, why we need to brace, the different types of bracing, and then some quick exercises to help improve your bracing.